Hello, welcome to the Naktamun archives. I'm the Minotaur reviewer. As I have been making my Minotaur reviews on Reddit, I have been repeatedly asked two questions. What are Minotaur decks that I play, and what would my ideal Minotaur card be? To answer the first, in the description I have listed links to some decks that I have made in the past, for those curious. To answer the second will be the discussion of this video. So let's investigate where Minotaurs are now, and what I think they need from future sets. To understand the state of the Minotaur tribe, you need to understand their position compared to other popular tribes. In both Modern and Pioneer, Minotaur tribal is very niche. From my experience, Pioneer is more favored of the two and what I enjoy the most. Mostly because Pioneer is low enough in terms of power that we have a chance to build up our board states. And from what I understand, there are some fringe decks in Vintage and Legacy, but those are more weird combo decks, which we'll touch base on later. We aren't as explosive as goblins or elves, our lords aren't as cheap as merfolk, and we can't derive as much value as zombies or vampires. Minotaurs are the scrappy undercow that no one expects, but should not be underestimated. Minotaurs from the early days of MTG were pretty unexceptional. Starting with the humble Hurloon that became the mascot of Wizards of the Coast back then. Afterwards, they were usually overcosted or had bizarre abilities. There really wasn't much cohesion to the tribe. I mean, look at these. Talrim Piper forces flying creatures to block it. Or Hurloon Shaman, when it dies, each player sacrifices a land. Apocalypse made it even more bizarre. Minotaur Tactician cares if you have white or blue permanents. Rocket Disciple can prevent 1 point of damage or give a creature flying. Both of these cards are meant to be played in a Jeskai type deck, but I have to ask why? I get Apocalypse was a strange multicolor set, but this is ridiculous. Like, imagine if these were goblins instead of Minotaurs. The point is, when you think of Hydras, Dragons, Elves, or Merfolk, you would have an idea what they might do in an MTG card. Minotaurs, at this point in the game's history, I really couldn't tell you. Minotaurs just did whatever the set designers needed them to do, in the same way that humans don't really have a tribal identity. The difference is that more humans have been printed than Minotaurs, so there's been a lot more room for exceptional cards to, well, rise above the manure. There were some greener pastures with the likes of the Weatherlight character Tahngarth. While no less strange in his design, he was at least a cut above the rest. Probably the best thing to happen to the tribe during this era was Homelands, which is a weird thing to say, I'll admit. While Homelands isn't regarded too favorably by the community, the set was Wizards' first stab at Minotaur tribal cards. These cards are no less strange, but at least they set up the building blocks of what a Minotaur tribal card could look like in the future. Yet, Homelands also gave us the most important card for Minotaur tribal, and it's not even a Minotaur. Didgeridoo! Didgeridoo is one of those cards that is worded so elegantly, but deceptive. Given how activated abilities work, as long as you have 3 generic mana, you can spit out any Minotaur card from your hand at instant speed, while dodging most counterspells and the stack. This is where a lot of combo potential comes in the Legacy decks. All you really need are some cards that modify the creature type of creatures in your hand, and you have instant speed Eldrazi and Gristlebrand's for the low price of 3 generic mana. As we left the classic era of Magic, we would also see Minotaurs continue their streak of inconsequence through Ravnica, Alara, and the core sets. Things began to turn around with Zendikar as we were graced with the Lord of Shatterskull Pass, but it wasn't until Gatecrash with Boros Reckoner and the Theros block that the modern Minotaur tribal finally took shape. However, the problem was that all the best cards for the tribe were in the 3-drop slot. This creates the problem of having too many viable lords crowding each other out. Meanwhile, only a few good cards were at 4 or 5 mana, and we got utter dregs for 1 and 2 mana. Amonkhet helped resolve the curve issues by adding more aggressive low curve options to round out the mid-range game plan. Bloodrage Brawler and On-Crop Crasher are probably my favorites. Not gonna lie, in Standard, dealing 7 damage on turn 3 felt so good. That said, I think I need to call out Burning Fist Minotaur. While playable and constructed, I really only include it in my lists due to a lack of anything better. Theros Beyond Death also provided an interesting 2-drop with Slaughter Priest of Mogus. However, I've not been impressed when using it in my tribal decks. But beyond that, we got Deathbellow Warcry.
And Mogus has seized the opportunity to set his Minotaurs upon them.
It's an expensive card, but being able to tutor 4 unique Minotaurs is game-ending if your opponent doesn't have a response. In my experimentation with Deathbellow Warcry, there are a lot of options available. The main objective is to have enough damage on board that your selection will win on the spot. So let's go over some of my favorite arrangements. Option 1, the keyword Buff Boys. For this, we select Rageblood Shaman, Kragma Warcaller, Neheb the Worthy, and Fellhide Putrefier. With this arrangement, all your Minotaurs will have First Strike, Trample, Death Touch, and Haste, and about +3 power and +1 toughness, at the very least. Or, if you have Neheb's bonus activated, they'll be +5 power, +1 toughness. So there's at minimum 19 power, and at max 27 power. With Trample, Death Touch, and First Strike, you can destroy any blocker with 1 damage and have the rest trample through, while your Minotaurs are guaranteed to survive. So if you don't kill them this turn, you're probably going to kill them the next turn. A variation on this would be to swap out Neheb with Oradun Veteran, as Battalion will give him Double Strike. This will mean he will hit for 12 damage on his own, which is an increase of 7 base power, but the rest of the herd will lose out on First Strike. Option 2, the Devoted. This strategy is focused on making use of Fanatic of Mogus's Devotion trigger. For this, we will use Rageblood Shaman, Kragma Warcaller, Fanatic of Mogus, and either Neheb the Eternal or Morog. With the selection, if Fanatic enters last, then we'll have a devotion of 6, at least off the bat. Then, when we go to combat, if we choose Morag over Neheb, we should have about 29 power with Trample, and even more if we manage to get a Landfall trigger off of Morag. If Neheb was chosen, we'll have 23 power, but the combat step will give us a boatload of mana that we can probably use to finish off the game afterwards. You can build Deathbellow Warcry with the goal of casting it as fast as possible and killing your opponents on the spot. Or you could go into a control style and resolve the spell when your opponent is unable to prevent it from being cast. Or you could just include it in your basic tribal lists as a late game finisher. So with that brief history of the state of Minotaur tribal for constructed formats, what does the tribe need? What do I want? As I've hopefully highlighted, 3-drops are a competitive space for the cows. We have a lot of good lord effects in that area, and not enough feasible deck space to run them all. Furthermore, the early game is suffering with only one 1-drop outside of Changeling Outcast in Modern, and it's not even really a Minotaur. 2-drops are a little better, but we're far from desirable. We're making do with what we have, to put it bluntly. Burning Fist Minotaur, Slaughter Priest of Mogus, and Deathbellow Raider in any other popular tribe likely wouldn't be run. They're good enough, but we can do better. 4 drops and higher I think are in a good place right now with Neheb the Eternal, Neheb Dreadhorde Champion, Fanatic of Mogus, Kragma Warcolor, and Morog. So my ideal Minotaur card would be a 1 or a 2 drop in either red, black, or multicolored, such as a basic 2-mana 2/2 with an Anthem effect would be welcome, like Merfolk Mistbinder, but for Minotaurs. Let's call it a Herald of Mogus. Another idea would be to make a Minotaur that had Didgeridoo's effect, as Didgeridoo technically is on the reserved list. This would be probably a 3-mana card, but I believe you can make it work as a 2-drop if you statted the creature properly. Let's call it the Magus of the Didgeridoo. However, I think the perfect Minotaur that the tribe needs is a punchy 1-drop. As such, what I want more than anything else would be a card I call Herloon Bully, a 1-red mana 2/2 where it has haste as long as you control another Minotaur. This is a card comparable to Goblin Guide, but still has its power reeled in. I think the design is flavorful and elegant. You could play this turn 1 as essentially a 2/2 like Isamaru, or in the later turns have it as a small creature that can easily jump into an attack when you have established your lords. It's a card that is relevant anytime you play it. I also think naming it Herloon Bully is flavorful, as it shows that the Minotaur is too cowardly to be aggressive without the presence of its peers, much like real bullies. Maybe this card is still too powerful considering the rules text they placed on the recent Wayward Guide Beast, but we're living in magical Christmas land, right? And I think Herloon Bully isn't outrageous considering the state of Standard's power levels, whatever that's worth. So, there we go. Thank you for watching and be sure to subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think Minotaur Tribal needs. I'll see you later.